the icon, Mr. Robert Englund! You are all my children now. So I'm gonna pimp a couple of my new projects, and then we'll get right into a Q&A. I just wanted to let you know I just got back from England, where I shot a wonderful film I'm really proud of. I guess the best description would be a thriller, but I'm starring with Finn Jones from Game of Thrones and the beautiful Emily Barrington from The White Queen, and I play a little English projectionist who gets fired because he refuses to learn how to run the digital projector. And he has his revenge at the midnight movie. And I believe it's going to be called Midnight Movie here. Over in the UK, I think they're calling it The Last Showing. But the director is amazing. He was discovered by Steven Spielberg. So I'm really proud of this film. And then I believe this month, being released here in the States, is a film that I'm in called Sanitarium. And the doctor, host, narrator is Malcolm McDowell. And the great Malcolm McDowell, who when I was in college, I idolized Malcolm from a movie called If. This was even before Clockwork Orange. And also it stars Lou Diamond Phillips, who's on Longmire now. And Lou is great in this project. It's almost, his segment is almost like one of those classic Twilight Zones that are very paranoid, and somebody's trapped in the bomb shelter and won't let his neighbors in. Also the great John Glover from Smallville is in it, and he does a sort of Tim Burton-esque artist character who makes little dolls that come alive. So his segment is the one that I'm in. It's really good too. So Sanitarium this year here in the States, and then later next year it's either going to be The Last Showing or Midnight Movie, and I'm real proud of that one, and I will recommend it. Okay, we've got a microphone right here. I'm willing and ready to answer any and all questions. Ask me about my co-stars, ask me about my career, ask me about what I had for breakfast or what I drank at Tootsie's Orchid Lounge last night. First question!
Everybody recognizes you from Freddy from the Nightmare series, but I was wondering how it was working on Strangeland with all the prosthetic body modifications.
Well, you know, Strangeland, I was doing another movie and I drove with Nancy, my wife, to Colorado to do Strangeland. I like Dee Snider, and now that I know him, you know, we're good friends. But I wanted to work with Elizabeth Pena, the wonderful Elizabeth Pena from Down and Out in Beverly Hills. And I had already worked with Linda Cardellini, and I wanted to work with Linda again. And Linda was so great on ER, for those of you who were fans of that show. And then I got there, and I was hanging out with Dee, and he had all these coffee table books of tattoos, rare tattoos, tribal tattoos, ancient tattoos, piercings, and all of the various beliefs associated with them. And I knew how serious he was about this film, and we set about making it. I believe our director was a theater director and did not have as much experience directing for film. And sometimes what happens is you choreograph the master shot very well if you're a theater director, but you have to remember to come in and get all your coverage. You know, whether it's a hand opening a door or whether it's an extra close-up of an important line by even a character that has a small part. And so I was kind of wary of that a little bit. I didn't have to do that much prosthetics. That was almost all Dee and the other actors. years. I did, for the very ending, I had to wear some stuff. But it was, compared to Freddie, compared to my Phantom of the Opera, compared to my Stephen King movie, The Mangler, it was very, very easy, because those all were a lot more labor-intensive makeups. And I don't complain anymore, because after, The Elephant Man and Tim Curry's makeup in Legend with Tom Cruise, there's been people that have much more difficult makeups than I have, and much more longer ones. I was doing a show with fans in England a couple of years ago, and they put us all up at this little hotel out in the countryside with teenage girls that looked like, Princess Diana on horseback riding through the village. And there was a Thai restaurant and an Irish pub and an Indian restaurant, which made me quite happy. But at the bar, it was me, a couple of heroes, a couple of people from Lost, a couple of Star Wars people, and the orcs from Lord of the Rings. And I was hanging out with the orcs. They're all Maoris from New Zealand. And the orcs told me that their makeup call was 2 a.m. in the morning. For the head orcs, that's how long they were in makeup. So after a couple of Irish whiskeys, I didn't brag about my makeup anymore. Because those guys really went through some stuff on Lord of the Rings. So, with Strangeland, it was pretty mild for me in my experiences. But I know there's a sequel script to Strangeland. It's very interesting, and I figure rather prominently in it. But, Dee's so busy now with his reality show. I think he's taken some time off from financing the second installment. Anyway, thanks for your question.
Thank you.
Next, victim.
A little nervous. I haven't been a fan of yours since V. I remember Willie, he was my favorite character. And I have a question, because me and my sister have been arguing for years. Freddie versus Jason. I say Freddie won, she said Jason won. Who do you say won?
Well, Freddie's still alive, and my theory is, you can see his little wink, even though he's been decapitated. Jason cut the head off the snake. I think Freddie still exists. You have to understand, Freddie exists in imagination. He's not walking around in reality. People talk about him around campfires, and people gossip about him at the locker in junior high school, middle school. And so he's this myth, this legend, this ghost story. So what you think of Freddie is how he exists in your imagination from having been told about this child killer whose parents burned him alive back in the late 70s. And some people say that he's still on this street in Springwood. And so it's part of their imagination. So I always play Freddie as existing in a sort of fantasy, imaginative, surreal dreamscape. That's where he exists. But I'll tell you guys all a piece of gossip. I just did a movie in Pennsylvania also called Canterbury. It's kind of romantic. It has a little bit of a vampire subplot to it. I liked it because it was romantic. And it also, again, I had a kind of Twilight Zone part where I was dropped into this story that begins to get rather surreal and fantasy-like. But I was hired by, and my leading lady is my old girlfriend from V, Diane, who played Harmony. So that movie is now in post-production. They just hired the guy to do the score. So for you V fans, you can see Diane and I reunited in Canterbury when it finally comes out. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
There's just like so many questions I could ask you, but the main one is, I know you've talked and you get your blessing on the relaunch of the Nightmare on the Street series. Now, with how good that did, is it possible that you would ever play Freddy again?
Well, it didn't do well. That's the whole point. It had a huge opening on a Friday, and then nobody went to see it for the rest of the weekend. Here's the thing, guys. I'm from Hollywood, and it's not all palm trees and movie stars. When I was a kid, you know, it was orange groves and dirt roads where you race hot rods, and then there was, you know, Beverly Hills and all that. But Hollywood, the business town, has always remade everything. They've been remaking movies since the silent films, you guys. And the reason is, there's only so many stories in the world to tell. And when you have a good story, whether it's Gone with the Wind, or whether it's Nightmare on Elm Street, or whatever the good story is, we tend to tell it again for new generations. Now, a lot of you kids out there, I respect you, and I bet some of you know movies that I would love that I don't know, but you have to trust us old farts. There's some great movies in black and white that you should check out. You gotta believe in me. One of the best war movies ever made is called The Innocents, starring Deborah Carr, based on Henry James Turner the Screw, and it was shot by the guy who shot Lawrence of Arabia in 1961. He could have done anything he wanted, and he chose to tell that story in black and white because it was the right way to see it. It's a style all its own. So you don't want to neglect the past. But remakes, they're part of the territory. They come with the territory in Hollywood. So I was not surprised. I think, to be critical, I would say that they did it too soon. And not blaming anybody, but what has happened with technology is that young people now, you can go find a Blu-ray, remastered digital DVD, high definition of Rosemary's Baby, and put it up on your man cave flat screen, and it looks great. It's a great film. It's like seeing it opening day. And with the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, they're all out in Blu-ray, box set, high def, DVD. You have a sleepover. If you're a dad that saw the original one, and you've got the original t-shirt with a couple of holes in it, and you want to share an experience with your son, and he's got a couple of buddies over on Friday night for a sleepover in that crummy Sears sleeping bag with some homemade popcorn, and you pop on the Blu-ray, high def, digitally remastered, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, or you pop on Freddy vs. Jason, or you pop on the Stephen Hopkins Part 5, or you do a double bill of 3 and 4. They look great today. They hold up that way. So what the people at Warner Brothers, Time Warner, and Michael Bay's Platinum Dunes didn't realize is, they thought that nobody'd seen the movie since they first came out, that they'd all been watching it on some old video, you know, that they'd seen them on the Late Show with a bunch of commercials, or on cable on a small screen. They forgot that there's an entire generation that's seen them projected pristine at home with the new technology. So now these kids go see the new one, and they just like ours better, I think. That's what happened. So that's my theory. But I love the cast of the new one. Clancy Brown from Highlander. Come on, Clancy. He's on the new Sleepy Hollow show. He's the sheriff. Connie Britton from Your Nashville. Connie Britton as the alcoholic mom. Great casting. We love Connie. And the boy, one of the boys in it, I starred with on Criminal Minds. And I also did a movie with him called Red with the great Brian Cox, the original Hannibal Lecter from Manhunter. He's a terrific young actor. Rooney Mara from Girl with a Dragon Tattoo. She's wonderful. So I like the cast. I just think they made the kids too haunted from the get-go. And, you know, in terms of the new Freddy, Jackie's a wonderful actor. If you don't believe me, check him out in Shutter Island. He's the Rorschach. He's great, you know. He's a wonderful, wonderful young actor. And I think if they do any more, you know, he'll surprise you. Thank you. Next question.
Anyways, my question, first off, did you have to audition long to play Freddy? I mean, and then the second question, sorry, quickly, do you still keep in touch with any of the cast?
Oh, I see lots of the people. I haven't seen Johnny Depp since the late 90s, but I see the other cast members at events like this, and we all worked together on Heather's documentary, a brilliant documentary called Never Sleep Again, which you guys all got to see, because it's the greatest documentary about not only Nightmare on Elm Street, it has home movies, original home movies, Super 8, 16 millimeter video of us making it, interviews with everybody from every single film, and it's just a great time capsule of late 80s, early 90s filmmaking in Hollywood. So I would recommend, so I see a lot of the people. You know, my audition, and this is in my book, so it's not that fresh, and I've told this story before on, you know, Nashville radio and things like that, but I was starring in V, and I got the call for this audition. It fit perfectly in my break from V. We call it a hiatus. And I'd been surfing, and I was real tan, and I had long, blonde, curly hair then, like William Catt from Great American Hero. That's sort of what my hair looked like. And I weighed about 10 more pounds than I do now. I was all muscle because I was a lot younger. And I drove over, I had an old Datsun 2000, it's a sports car, it's like an MG, Japanese MG. And I drove over, and I got even more sun driving all the way from, I lived at the beach then, into Hollywood. And I parked, and I looked in the mirror, and it was kind of sunburned and long and windblown. And I said, God, I don't look right for this at all. So I took the dipstick out of the engine, and I got some oil on my hands, and I slicked my hair back. Now I have very thin hair, so I slicked it back, and I have a high hairline. So that kind of worked. And then I took my finger and I licked it, and I took a little bit of cigarette ash. My buddy was a chain smoker, and he left a couple of butts in my ashtray. I just took a little tiny bit of cigarette ash and mixed it with my saliva, and I rigged underneath my eyes, like circles under my eyes. Then I went in, and I buttoned my shirt all the way up to the top, so I looked kind of strange. And I just sat there and I played staring games with Wes Craven. And that's, I think, how I got the part. Now, Wes remembers it differently than I do, and he's very kind in his memory, but that's mostly what I remember, is just trying to shut up. But I do remember Wes telling me the idea and the concept. And I was nodding, you know, I liked it. I was nodding along. I really thought that was an interesting concept, and I was hooked. But I don't remember talking a lot. I think I might have said, I kind of see where you're going, Mr. Craig. I like that. But I wasn't talking a lot. Like, I love to talk. And I kept my big mouth shut, zipped up on that one. That's how I got the part. I got home, and you guys don't remember, but there used to be answering machines. And I had my answering machine, and I actually shared an answering machine service with Lily Tomlin. And we had the same girl, and she says, Robert, you got the part, honey. So by the time I got back to my house, they decided to give me the part. Now, I also have to give credit to the casting director, because I had been up for a National Lampoon movie with her, and I screen tested for every single role. I was the jock, I was the nerd, I was the serial killer. I auditioned for everything in this movie called National Lampoon's Class Reunion. Not a good movie. But at the time, I liked the script that I wanted to be in, because the National Lampoon movies were still close enough to Animal House that we all wanted to be part of. And I think she felt bad. I mean, big actresses were asking to screen test with me. Annie Potts from Designing Woman was begging to screen test with me. And I remember thinking, of course I'm going to work in this, and I didn't get a single role off. I think I canceled myself out. So Annette Bening, the casting director, might have just been really strong, fighting for me in my corner, and she might have convinced Wes. I know we'll never know the whole truth, but the rest is history. Okay, next question.
Hello. I was wondering, I think you played mostly horror characters and stuff like that. I was wondering.
Actually, and I'm not tooting my horn here, but I just finished my 78th movie, and I've only done about 20 horror movies, so it's really only about a quarter of my work. But I will be honest, horror And and Wes taught me to respect the genre of horror. And so I will be known, I'm sure, forever, as a horror actor, because those are my starring roles. Go ahead, I'm sorry. You said I'm mostly known for horror films. Yeah.
This is a wild question. I know comics nowadays, there are a couple of age wide characters, comic characters have gone wrong. So have you ever thought of playing a comic book character?
Well, I love comics, but I'm an old dog, and my taste in comics is very retro, except I love some of the European graphic novels, and I collect them when I'm over there.
And what character would that be?
Well, what I'm saying is, there's the comics, the ones that I brought back, there's nothing for me in them. In fact, one of them is like an ant detective, but it's this great graphic novel. And it's really sexy, and it's really cool, and it's like an old detective movie, but it's all insects. But it works. I mean, it's really strange. And that's one of my favorite new graphic novels. But there's really, I love what Paul Giamatti did, in his film, where he played, help me you guys, I'm forgetting. The great illustrator, Art Crumb. I love what Paul Giamatti did playing the illustrator. I think that would be closer to me. I would love to do a dark movie where I would play someone like Stan Lee, or some unknown illustrator of a graphic novel. My wife and I just flew back from England last week, and we saw a movie on Virgin Airlines, because it's an English airline. They had a mini-series called, and you guys should all write this down, Utopia. And it's for comic book fans online in a chat room. Young, handsome, black IT guy, an English girl, typical English girl, paramedic, a little boy, a rich man, and an immigrant East Indian who's off the grid. And they celebrate this graphic novel, and they've discovered that it's a code for chemical weapons. And they go to see the second chapter that the rich guy has bought, and they get to his apartment, and a hitman has been there, and we see what the hitman does to him, and that just changes the whole balance. So it's the pursuit of the final chapter of a graphic novel which will tell us the plot. And all four of these comic book fans are now being hunted by this secret ex-government chemical warfare hitman. And they discover this girl who's the daughter of the illustrator who did the graphic novel. And her name is Jessica Hyde. I love that name. And this girl, this actress that plays it, is like a combination of La Femme Nikita and Audrey Hepburn. And she's going to be a huge star. And she acts real strange, kind of like Maureen Mathurin did in the remake of V. She moves like half ninja, half ballerina. Anyway, Utopia. Nancy and I only saw the first 4 hours. We couldn't blink. We sat there with our Bloody Marys at 30,000 feet like this. It was amazing. So check it out. Maybe you can discover it on Netflix. But that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to play like a dark illustrator or a Stan Lee or somebody like that. I think that would be better for me than a comic book hero. Maybe a comic book maker or illustrator or something that maybe something goes evil and wrong with me. But anyway, thank you for your question. Next.
Hello there.
Hi.
So with like the Friday the 13th and the Halloween movies, there's always a different person that plays the villain. What was it that kept you continuing to be Freddy over and over?
What's my charming personality? No, I think, first of all, Kane Hodder's done quite a few. Let's hear it for Kane. Done a lot of Jasons. And he's doing some really nasty work right now in the Hatchet franchise. Adam Green, Victor Crowley. Anyway, no, I think with me, It was my body language. I borrowed from, I don't know if you guys have seen Nosferatu with Klaus Kinski, but I borrowed from that because he was bald, and he did a thing with his neck, and his hands were in here, and I used a little bit of that, and then I borrowed a little bit, because I'm not a big guy, I borrowed a little bit of the Jimmy Cagney swagger, and I wanted Freddie to be more like this, but what happened is that damn glove is so heavy, and he got it on all day, that it became this. The glove is in the right hand, so it became what? Like a gunfighter. So that became Freddie's posture. And so those two elements came together. And then this is weird. And I also think this influenced Michael Jackson too. There's a great Broadway choreographer named Bob Fosse. And the movie All That Jazz with Roy Scheider from Jaws is about him. But Bob Fosse directed some great movies, including All That Jazz. And he moved what they call asymmetrical movement. In fact, he has a dance number in an old Broadway musical called Pajama Game, called Steamed Heat. It's a famous number with his wife, Gwen Verdon, who was Sweet Charity and all these other things. And you know, Bob Fosse also did Cabaret. If you watch that movie, the dance number in it is Michael Jackson, 1953. And you know Michael loved old movies. Michael Jackson was probably watching Turner, movies, and saw that when he was a little kid, living in Encino when the Jackson 5 first started, before he got his signature moves, and he saw that Bob Fosse thing. Well, I also am a fan of this guy, and I think that I used a little bit of that in Freddie's movement asymmetrically. So those are the influences, and it's weird how actors can use that stuff. And then one day I was sitting in the makeup room early on in the first film. It was like 100 degrees out. I'm in the old I Love Lucy makeup room. And I'm in a barber's chair. And I've been there since 5 in the morning. And they're basting me with KY jelly, and poking me in the eye, and poking me in the nose. And I'm all itchy. And I look over, and there's the handsomest man in the world, Johnny Depp, getting makeup on. It's like, he doesn't need makeup. He's the handsomest guy in the world. And next to him, Heather Langenkamp, who at that time was the most beautiful girl in the world. She was like a petite Brooke Shields, getting makeup on. She doesn't need makeup. She's 19. And they gave them, Johnny and Heather, they gave them these little tiny fans to keep them cool. Here I am, 30 years old, just did just won a big award in Italy. And I'm wondering, have I made a mistake doing this Freddy Krueger monster? I don't know. And I'm itchy, and I'm in a bad mood, and I'm looking over at those two beautiful kids, and I thought, I envy them. They've got their whole lives and career ahead of them. I'm worried about making the right decision. I can use that. I can use that as Freddy. It's like a little trick actors use. So every time I would be in a scene with them, I could just remember that moment and just be angry with them. And just kind of call up that anger instead of having to act it. So those are all the things that went in to playing Freddy that I think worked for me. And maybe that's why nobody else, because once you lay that stuff down for an audience, they kind of like it, they get used to it. And then of course there's Freddy's wonderful sense of humor, right? I like your boots! Well, I don't think people look up to Freddy. I don't think anybody looks up to Freddy or wants to really be Freddy. I think we are captivated by the sweater, by the silhouette, by the glove being an extension of ourselves, of the evil of Freddy, the silhouette and the shadow of the hat, the body language, the posture. And we love the movies so much, and Freddy is the symbol of the movies. And we love that symbol. Freddy is the symbol of the Nightmare on Elm Street experience. So that's why we like Freddy as a logo. But believe me, and I've seen you have half of it on, nobody wants to sit through that makeup every day. nobody wants to go out and stab people. What we like is that Freddy does not apologize for his evil. And Freddy has also been wronged. I don't ask anybody to sympathize with Freddy, but I've always thought that Freddy never went all the way to hell. He kind of got halfway there in purgatory, because Freddy was done wrong too. He was burned alive by the vigilante parents, and that's what his revenge is on. And what better way to punish them than to terrorize their children? But you have to remember, and if you watch the first movie very carefully, the whole first movie is Heather's dream. It's Nancy's dream, because at the end of the movie, who pulls up to take her to school? Johnny Depp, Amanda Wyss, Tina. They're all alive. She dreamed. What's it called? The word. No, the word when something's going to happen. The whole movie is a premonition. She's having a premonition of what's going to happen. It does all eventually happen, but it hasn't happened yet. The first thing that happens is the last thing of the movie. Is I grab Ronnie Blakely and I drag her through the door. But all that other stuff is going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. It's Heather's premonition. So you have to remember it that way, that a lot of that stuff's just going on in somebody's dream. It's not really happening out there in the alley. Thank you. I like your boots. Is this the last question?
If anybody else has any questions for Mr. Englund, please.
Let me know. Okay.
My question's always been, was in the original, like y'all coming up with Nightmare on Elm Street, was he always sarcastic or as far as when they wrote it, or was that something you added in?
No. Wes gets a little upset because, we exploited the humor of Freddy. But if you watch the first movie, Freddy cuts off his fingers and cracks a joke, cuts off Tina's face and puts it on and cracks a joke, sticks his tongue out of a phone and cracks a joke. You're my boyfriend now. I'm your boyfriend now. All that stuff. So Freddy was always cracking wise. We went overboard in part 6, but we did it intentionally. We wanted to kind of make it like a Warner Brothers cartoon. And the fans loved the humor, so we went that way with it. One of the theories is there was a series of articles in the LA Times newspaper, and somewhere near here, I think maybe Ohio, there was a lot of people coming from, I think it might have been Cambodia or Laos, and there were some really good-hearted Baptist people that were taking care of these people that had been flooded out, or they were coming from a war zone, and they would come to the Midwest, and they were given housing, and they were being given schooling in English and how to get jobs, and they were immigrating, and they had come to this area in Ohio that was just perfectly green and flat, and beautiful little white frame homes with a nice big acre of lawn in front and a nice old garage or barn in the back. And they were put up in these beautiful clean rooms, but it was so different from the hot, sexy, sticky jungle environment that they came from. And they were unable, when they had nightmares, to wake themselves up and write their nightmare down as a poem or as a song lyric, or draw it and purge themselves from their nightmares, and they were dropping like flies. It was this huge article. I remember reading it before I ever went on the audition. It was just too much of a cultural shift for them, and they were unable to get rid of their bad dreams, and they were dying in their sleep. And Wes Craven saw that article, and that's another influence on the original Nightmare on Elm Street, based in truth.
So basically, what my question is besides Jason Voorhees, is there any other iconic villains that you think Freddy would have pitted up against?
Well, I certainly don't want to have to throw down with that Chucky, little peckerhead. I'll tell you guys a little piece of gossip. Kevin Yeager did my makeup for many, many movies. Kevin Yeager produced Johnny Depp's Sleepy Hollow, Kevin Yeager's married to the beautiful Catherine Hicks from Seventh Heaven. And Kevin created the Crypt Keeper. Wonderfully talented guy. And did my makeup. And Kevin would bring in all these incarnations of Chucky. He also created Chucky. And I saw, like, the first Chucky was fat and wore a baseball hat. You know, he kept refining it, and they turned him down for years. And another irony is that Ronnie Yu directed Freddy vs. Jason, directed Bride of Chucky. So it's sort of like the circle remains unbroken, you know. But no, I thought for a minute, we came this close to doing Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash. And Sam Raimi was then the king of Hollywood because of Spider-Man. He had more money than God. And he went to the big meeting with Bob Shea, head of New Line Cinema, and Ted Turner and everybody from Time Warner and Michael Bay. And he wanted Ash to win, to beat Jason and to beat Freddy. And I kind of liked that idea because I had this vision of a poster with Bruce Campbell with his 300 sprayed abs, you know, and his shirt off, and the poster would say, Freddy versus Jason versus Ash. Keeping the world safe from sequels. Bruce would be standing there with me and Jason in a headlock, you know. But wiser heads prevailed, and they realized that Nightmare on Elm Street is the most successful of all those franchises, so they couldn't kill off Freddy. So that's why that never happened. And now I think they're just going to reboot the other films, but I don't know after the disappointing box office of the remake. Next question.
Hi. When you first got casted for Freddy, did you ever believe that the franchise was going to run this far and the popularity?
No, we none of us had any idea. We knew we were on to something good. We knew it was special. You know, some of the sets were really cool. We knew that, you know, all the girls, my girlfriend, all the girls knew Johnny was going to be a star. He was like Elvis then. He was like baby Elvis. He was in a rockabilly band, and he just moved out from Florida. So he was standing around with a cigarette, Johnny. You know, he was like standing around with a baby Elvis, like a 16-year-old Elvis Presley. Heather was phenomenal and beautiful. Amanda Liss was already doing a lot of other work as well. So we knew we were on to something. And John Saxon, obviously, the great John Saxon. But none of us thought it was going to be that big. And for me, I was a little distracted between the makeup and the summer and the heat. And also, I was having my first bit of celebrity then. I'd done 15 movies and lots of television, but my show V was a hit. And I was dealing with a lot of that attention. And I had to go back to the series. So that's what part of my mind, part of my head was still there. So I wasn't really paying as much attention. My first indication that it was really something big, I was in New York signing autographs, the old Roosevelt Hotel. I think William Shatner was there also. It was for science fiction fans. And I was signing, you know, my Willie photos and talking to the fans, and the sci-fi fans were really a lot about plot, and I was having trouble keeping some of the plot parts, you know, straight from V. And all of a sudden, the head of New Line Cinema came in, and he goes, Robert, I'm going to take you out to lunch. When you're done here, he goes, oh, look at all your Freddy fans. Isn't this great? Now, Nightmare on Elm Street had only opened in Boston, New York, and New Jersey. They had like 2 or 3 prints and an old station wagon and screening it up and down the coast. And I said, no, Bob. I said, these are my V fans. He goes, nah, Freddy fans. I said, Bob, V's a huge hit. These are my V fans. And they were, for the most part, until I looked outside the door. And there in the rain on 47th Street, the Diamond District in New York, Marathon Man Country, I'm looking out, and all of a sudden, my little V fans turn into the Ramones, and guys with mohawks, and girls with tats and black leather vests on, and they were, as far as I could see, black leather in the rain. They were the first heavy metal, speed metal, Freddie fans. And then later on it became all the dorm rats on the East Coast discovered it. And I would get all of this fan mail from all the kids that were away from home living in dorms. And somehow they had gone to see it. It was just, the word had spread like wildfire through college dorms. And that was my secondary fans. And then it was the kid sister and the kid brother of those people that heard about it from an older brother or an older sister trying to terrorize them. And then it just sort of spread. And I was over for V in Italy to get an award for Best Supporting Actor on V opposite Richard Chamberlain and the Thornbirds. And I had my girlfriend with me, and I was jet-lagged, and I couldn't sleep, and it was like 5 in the morning, and the sun was just coming up, and everything was shut in Milan, and I walked through the park near the zoo, and this little Italian grandmother came up to me, and she goes, "Hey, ciao, Freddy." And I knew then, I mean, this is real early on, this is like 85, and I knew then we'd just taken off, you know, that there was no stopping the snowball. So thank you.
Freddie is a pretty dark, scary, twisted person. I was wondering, as an actor, like at the end of the day, were you able to just turn that off and go home, or did it stick with you and your psyche?
Well, what you have to understand is, as I said earlier, 4 hours of makeup, colostomy bag glue, all over me, KY jelly, makeup man poking at me all day with the butt end of a paintbrush. You're in a bad mood. I mean, I think it's actually easy. It's like when you see a guy in a movie with a limp, an actor, sometimes you put a pebble in our shoe just to remind us. I didn't have to do that. I was uncomfortable enough and hot enough and itchy enough that I could just use that bad mood, just turn it into the character, you know, because it was always right there, simmering, you know, that I was in a bad mood, you know. Let's get this shot, man, I'm uncomfortable, you know, kind of thing. And that real quickly can become, let's get this shot! You know, I can get there. I can make that leap really quick because you found that area. So I was able to do that. And then also that thing I told you about, especially with the kids, I used the fact that I was 30 years old. I had a hit TV show, it hadn't been canceled yet, and I was wondering if I was doing the right thing. And here they were, these really talented, young, beautiful actors with their whole careers ahead of them. And I was using a little bit of the envy. It's like, you know, that old hippie saying, never trust anybody over 30. Well, you hit 30 and you kind of realize it's time to be a grown-up, you know. And I was sort of at that phase in my life and questioning things. And so I had just enough hindsight that I could look at Johnny and Heather and use that envy that I had for them as an acting trick. But no, I never take home the stuff. You know, the film I just did in London, I had the worst mustache in the world. I looked like Hitler. And I hated it, you know, and I'm clean shaven and I had my hair kind of funny. So I really couldn't go out. I hated the way I couldn't go out in public. And I wanted to go hear a couple, there were some really good DJs in the little village I was in, and I couldn't go hear them. And so I would like, a little bit of that came home with me there sometimes. Or I was trying very hard not to move like Robert Englund in that movie. I was trying to move more pronate, you know, more in. So I was doing that a lot just to make myself do it, and I was trying to work just a basic, even English accent. So when I would be in a restaurant or something, I would order with an English accent. And so I was a little bit in character on that one. But I don't really bring my characters home with me. Some actors do. I worked with Sean Penn years ago. He took me to a Peter Gabriel concert, but he was still in character from the movie. You know, he was speaking with a southern accent, and he had his hair dyed real blonde, and it was amazing. But he would talk to me, but he'd go, "Oh, Robert, you know, this Peter Gabriel song is just so cherry." He was completely in character as this guy he was playing in a movie called Crackers. Anyway, thank you. Last question, according to my boss here. You are the last question, sir.
All right. I love movies, but I was curious, what was the experience like doing a voiceover for yourself in Call of Duty Zombies?
Well, I did. We all did Call of Duty. Just so you know, imagine this. You see how this gentleman is dressed asking the question? Imagine me, Michael Rooker from Walking Dead, and Danny Trejo in black tights with little balls all over us. Because we were on the Avatar. We were the Avatar crew for Call of the Dead. And we were pretty silly looking with our beer bellies. Although the lovely Sarah Michelle Gellar just had a baby and she looked hot, let me tell you. But so we did, that was a real learning experience because I hadn't done, I had not done that much sophisticated motion capture yet. So I learned how to do motion cap. But the fun was, we came back after the whole game was done, and then we did the voiceovers. See, that's how you do it. And the further you get into the game, the more we were allowed to improvise. So the better you are, the more you hear us improvising. And I decided, because we're all actors, we're not supposed to be Freddy Krueger or any of our Machete or any of our characters. We're supposed to be actors on location with George Romero making a zombie movie, and the zombies become real, and we have to kill zombies. Or you choose one of us, for your avatar, and you kill zombies. So I'm Robert Englund, and so I decided, well, I'll just be a big pussy, I'll be a wimp. And I just run around screaming and complaining the whole time, which is, I think, a lot of fun, But it was fun to do, and I'm a big fan of Danny's. Years ago, I gave just before the Oscars, they have the Eddie Awards, which is for the editors. Before they do the Oscars, they have each union does their own award show in Hollywood, and we get asked to be presenters sometimes. And I walked out for those awards, and two of my favorite actors were there, Joe Don Baker and Danny Trejo, and so I did a call out to both of them, and then years later, I was on the Fear Awards, and I was presenting for Rob Zombie, and I saw Danny that night too, and I called out, and then shortly after that, Danny just hit the big time, he's one of the busiest actors working in Hollywood now, and he's such a great guy, he's always helping out family and friends, and stuff like that. So the best part of that experience was just sitting around in your own clothes. Because when you do voiceovers, I do a lot of cartoon stuff. I just did the regulars with Mark Hamill, and I'm doing the Green Lantern now and some other stuff. But the best part is you can show up in your underwear or your pajamas. You can be a hairball. You don't have to shave or anything, and it's fun. And it's also great because everybody jokes around in those sessions too. And you can do it over and over and over because it doesn't cost anything. You can try it 100 different ways. It's really fun to do. If any of you have gifts in that direction, voiceover, or you've been told you have a good voice or an interesting voice, every once in a while you'll hear a girl that has a kind of metallic voice. And those voices sound great for cartoons and for playing kids. And if you're over 18, then they don't have to hire a kid, and it saves money. So if any of you have ever been told you sound like a late-night jazz disc jockey, KISS Nashville, bringing you the sultry sounds of Freddy Krueger. If anybody ever tells you you have a good voice, it's always something you could explore. Take a nice little class in narration or voiceover, because it doesn't matter where you live. They need people doing voiceovers. It's a lot of fun. Thank you. I think that's it, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm going to go back inside until 4 o'clock. Yeah. And had a great night last night in your hometown, man. It was down on Broadway. It was happening. Blake Shelton, lots of neon, a couple of shots at Tootsie's Orchid Lounge. Thanks for coming. Thanks for having me.